Hi everyone, this is the fourth lecture of week 4, and in this lecture we're going to turn to the aftermath of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Again, you can listen to this as an audio, and it would be best if you have read the biblical text before you listen to this lecture. So when we left off, Lot's house, in which the two angels were guests of, were surrounded by the men who demanded that Lot bring out these guests so that they can be sexually abused. Though Lot offered, of course, to send out his 2 virginal daughters instead. Okay. The men, however, would not be thwarted. They want to violate the guests, at which point the angels strike these men with blindness. They pull the family out of the house in order to hurry them out of town because the angels now recognize that the town is about to be destroyed. Okay. And in the midst of this fight, the family is instructed not to look back. And after some back and forth with the angels, the family is allowed to flee to a nearby town called Zoan instead of the wilderness. Okay. We are told in Genesis 19:26 that in the midst of this flight, that Lot's wife, indeed, she doesn't follow the rules. She looks back and is magically turned into a pillar of salt. We don't know what this is about. Okay. Some say that there were salt pillars or sand pillars in the area that kind of look humanoid, and that the story about Lot's wife, looking back, maybe explains the existence of these kind of pillar humanoid thingamajiggies. You can Google Lot's wife and you can see a picture of what that looks like. It's unclear. Whatever the reason, the main purpose of it seems to be, the snippet about Lot's wife looking back really seems to be a way to kind of conveniently get rid of her. Okay. And the text needs to get rid of her in preparation for the kind of dramatic kind of, unseemly thing that happens in the aftermath of the family's flight. And this is what happens. Verse 30, okay? Now Lot went up out of Zoar. 1930. Now Lot went up out of Zoar and settled in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. So he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come in to us after the manner of all the world. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him so that we may preserve offspring through our father." So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose. On the next day, the firstborn said to the younger, "Look, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go and lie with him, so that we may preserve offspring through our father." So they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger rose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus, both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son and named him Moab. He is the answer of the Moabites to this day. The younger also bore a son and named him Ben-Ami, and he is the ancestor of the Ammonites to this day. Okay, so I got the town name wrong. It's not Zoan, it's Zoar. Okay. So some interesting features to note, obviously, in this tale. This is what I mean by Google text, not saying things that are usually taught in churches. Okay, whatever. Okay, so some features to note. Okay, notice again the appearance of wine and being drunk, okay, as a kind of context or foreshadow to signal that some illicit sexual misdeed is about to follow. We saw this with Noah. Okay, so you see it again with Lot. Okay, notice that the family flees into a cave in Zoar. Okay, and some have argued that a cave is kind of womb-like, okay, maybe symbolic of birth. So already maybe there's some setup for what happens, okay. Now, to be fair, there may be a good reason, kind of a good reason for why the daughters do this. Okay, remember that they have just fled from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they may think that they're the only people alive. So in order for humanity to continue, maybe they think, well, you have to, who else is there? You have to kind of commit incest. Okay, indeed, as I will discuss later, what is considered incest? What's too far and what's too close? Yeah, it really varies sometimes according to culture, okay, and context, okay. Notice how this story, notice also another feature of the story is notice how this is kind of narrative payback for Lot's willingness to throw out his daughters, okay, to the men to be sexually violated, okay. There's not exactly a sense of direct karma necessarily in the Hebrew text. There is some sense of it though. There's this kind of idea that there's comeuppance, or you kind of just deserve something like it. Okay. So and this may be one instance, an instance of that for Lot's willingness to allow the sexual violation of his daughters. Daughters in turn sexually violate him. Okay. As scholars have also noticed, there is an obvious political kind of national ethnic joke aspect to the story. Okay. Obviously, this is an Israelite origin tale, etiology again, about Moab and Ammon. Okay, the children who are produced because of Lot's affair with his daughters. And there's wordplay here, Ben Ami, okay, sounds like the phrase son of my mother, okay, and we are told Ben Ami is the name of the forefather of the Ammonites, okay, and Moab sounds like from my father, okay, and we're told that Moab is the forefather of the Moabites, okay, or of Moab, okay. So who or what was Moab and Ammon? Okay, both of them were interestingly neighboring nations, very close to Israel. Okay, and now located in what is called the Jordan. Okay, indeed, the capital of Jordan is still Amman. Okay, anyways, so what you get here is kind of an ancient yo mama joke. Okay, the biblical writer uses sexuality to poke fun of their neighboring countries, to demean them. Okay, haha, you Ammonites and Moabites, you guys are like, your father slept with your mother, you're the descendants of incest. Okay, or so seems the taunt. Okay, it goes. Okay. Notice again that the biblical writers are not above using sex and what they consider sexual norms or deviations, okay, to make fun of other people. Again, they're not liberals, they're not conservatives. Okay, they have their own issues. Okay. Lastly, this story again seems to have another purpose, right? Not only to make fun of Moab and Ammon, okay, but also to now utterly dismiss Lot as a potential heir to the Abrahamic promise. Okay, after the story, we never hear from Lot again. Okay. The fact that we never hear about Abraham and the Israelites again in relation to Lot after this act of incest seems to indicate that Lot has gotten almost too far away from the promise, okay, to ever kind of make it back. Indeed, some scholars have even suggested that Lot almost acts as a foil of the elect chosen nation Israel. Okay. And of course, one of the kind of big questions that will be asked throughout the narrative is not just who will be the elect, who will inherit the Abrahamic promise, but as we go along in the stories, the questions will morph a little bit, okay, and it will turn into this other question or this interrelated question, okay, which is you get the beginnings of the Israelites wondering, well, why were we Israel chosen? What separates us from the unelect? Okay. What separates us from the kind of elect, okay, those who are maybe not rejected, okay, but not chosen either. After dismissing Lot as a potential heir to the Abrahamic promise, the narrative will turn to dismissing other possible contenders as well. And for that, please turn to the next video.